A voice that once defined a generation, a smile that felt effortless, almost untouched by pain. She was the girl America trusted, the woman who made millions believe in love again. But behind the image of Sandy, behind the warmth, the grace, and the light, there was a life shaped by illness, loss, and battles no one ever saw. This is not the story you remember. This is the story she lived. Olivia Newton-John wasn't just a celebrity, she was part of everyday American life. Her songs played on car radios during long summer drives, her movies filled living rooms on quiet Friday nights, and her presence felt familiar, almost like someone you knew. In an era before social media, when stars still felt distant, Olivia somehow felt close, real, warm, and sincere. But what made her truly unforgettable wasn't just her success. It was the contrast between what we saw and what she carried. Behind the spotlight was a story of resilience that few ever understood. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. If you remember her, stay with me, this story might surprise you. Olivia Newton-John's story didn't begin under the bright lights of Hollywood, it began an ocean away. She was born in Cambridge, England, in 1948, but it was in Australia, nearly 10,000 miles from where many Americans would first come to know her, that she found her voice. Raised in a home that valued discipline and education, Olivia was drawn to something less structured, something more emotional. She sang not because she was chasing fame, but because it made her feel understood. As a teenager, she performed in small venues, coffee shops, local television programs, modest stages where the audience was close enough to see every expression. There were no flashing lights, no massive crowds, just a young woman learning how to connect. Those early performances shaped something essential in her, a sincerity that would later set her apart in an industry often built on image. When she made her way back to England to pursue music more seriously, success didn't come overnight. There were moments of doubt, homesickness, and uncertainty. But slowly, steadily, she found her footing. Her early recordings began to gain attention, and by the early 1970s, American audiences were starting to listen. Her breakthrough in the United States came through countrypop, a genre that, at the time, was deeply rooted in tradition. Olivia's soft voice and gentle style resonated with listeners, but not everyone welcomed her. To some in the country music establishment, she was an outsider, an English-born, Australian-raised singer stepping into a space that felt distinctly American. There was resistance, even criticism, from those who believed she didn't quite belong. But something remarkable happened. While the gatekeepers hesitated, the audience didn't. Across the country, from small towns in the Midwest to long highways stretching across Texas, people connected with her music. It wasn't about where she came from. It was about how she made them feel. Her songs felt honest, comforting, and familiar, like a voice on the radio that stayed with you long after the drive was over. She didn't fit the mold. And yet, in many ways, that's exactly why she mattered. America didn't just accept her, it embraced her. Then came 1978. Grease. For many, this was the moment everything changed. Olivia stepped into the role of Sandy, a character who began as soft-spoken and innocent, only to transform into something bold and unforgettable. It wasn't just a performance, it was a cultural moment. Movie theaters filled, soundtracks played on repeat, and suddenly, Olivia Newton-John wasn't just a singer anymore. She was a global icon. But what made Sandy so powerful wasn't just the transformation at the end. It was the journey. Audiences saw themselves in her, the vulnerability, the desire to be loved, the courage to change. And through it all, Olivia brought a sense of authenticity that made the character feel real. By the time the credits rolled, something deeper had taken hold. She wasn't just admired. She was trusted. She became, in many ways, the girl America believed in, the one who felt safe, genuine, and quietly strong. And maybe that's why her story goes beyond fame. Because when someone feels that familiar, you don't just watch them. You carry them with you. And if you remember that feeling, stay with me, because her story is just beginning. But what many people don't realize is that before Grease, Olivia Newton-John was already facing something far less glamorous than success: uncertainty. In the years leading up to 1978, her career had begun to slow. The hits weren't landing the same way, the momentum was fading, and in an industry that moves fast, even a few quiet years can feel like being left behind. For an artist who had worked her way across continents to build a name, that silence carried weight. Behind the scenes, tensions were growing. Olivia found herself in a legal battle with her record label over unfair compensation, a move that, at the time, wasn't just risky, it was almost unheard of for someone with her image. She wasn't known for confrontation. She wasn't loud. But this was different. It was about control, about being valued, about not disappearing quietly. And that moment revealed something important. Success, no matter how bright it looks from the outside, isn't stable. It shifts. It fades. And sometimes, it forces you to make choices you never expected. Greece brought her back into the spotlight, but staying there required something else entirely. By the early 1980s, the cultural landscape in America was changing. Fitness was no longer just a routine, it was becoming a movement. Aerobics classes filled gyms from California to New York. VHS workout tapes began appearing in living rooms. The idea of health, energy, and physical confidence was becoming part of everyday life. And once again, Olivia made a choice that surprised everyone. In 1981, she released Physical. Gone was the soft-spoken image, the gentle country-pop voice people had come to expect. In its place was something sharper, bolder, more modern. Short hair, athletic outfits, headbands, movement, energy. She didn't just release a song, she stepped into a completely new identity. For many artists, that kind of shift can be dangerous. It can feel forced or disconnected. But for Olivia, it worked. Not because it was perfect, but because it was timely. She tapped into something the country was already feeling, a desire to move, to feel stronger, to take control of one's own body and image. Physical didn't just climb the charts, it stayed there, becoming one of the most recognizable songs of the decade. It played in gyms, on radios, in homes across America. And suddenly, Olivia wasn't just a beloved star from Greece. She was something else entirely, a symbol of confidence, vitality, and reinvention. But beneath that transformation, there was a quieter truth. This wasn't just creativity. It was survival. The industry had already shown her how quickly things could change. One moment you're at the top, the next you're trying to hold on. Reinvention wasn't optional, it was necessary. And Olivia understood that in a way few people ever saw. She adapted, not by chasing trends, but by stepping into them with sincerity. And that made all the difference. Because when change comes, it doesn't ask if you're ready. It simply arrives. And the real question becomes, can you change with it? If you've ever had to start over, even when no one saw it coming, stay with me. At the height of her success, when her name could still fill arenas and her voice still echoed across radios nationwide, Olivia Newton-John made a choice that many didn't expect. She stepped back. In 1984, she married actor Matt Lattanzi, and soon after, became a mother. For the first time in years, her life shifted away from sold-out tours and recording studios to something far quieter, far more personal. Instead of chasing the next chart-topping hit, she was raising her daughter, building a home, and embracing a rhythm that didn't depend on applause. For many in her audience, especially those who had grown alongside her, this decision felt familiar. It wasn't about walking away from success. It was about redefining it. But life has a way of changing direction when you least expect it. In 1992, at just 44 years old, Olivia was diagnosed with breast cancer. It wasn't a distant fear, it was immediate, real, and deeply personal. In that moment, everything shifted. The stage, the music, the image, none of it mattered in the same way anymore. She was no longer just a performer. She became a survivor. The journey that followed wasn't something played out in headlines or dramatic interviews. There were no public breakdowns, no spectacle. Instead, there was quiet endurance. Treatments, long days, uncertain nights, moments that most people never saw, but many could relate to. At the same time, she faced another profound loss, the passing of her father. Grief laid itself over illness, and the weight of both began to affect her marriage. What had once been a stable, loving relationship slowly came under strain, shaped by pressures that few couples are ever prepared for. And yet, through it all, Olivia remained composed. She didn't turn her pain into performance. She didn't invite the world into her most fragile moments. Instead, she carried it privately, with a kind of grace that felt almost old-fashioned, something many from earlier generations would recognize and respect. Her recovery wasn't quick. It took time, years, not months. And when she eventually returned to music, it was different. There was no rush to reclaim the spotlight. No urgency to prove anything. The tours were smaller, the projects more personal, the energy more grounded. She wasn't chasing the peak anymore. She was choosing what mattered. And that shift was subtle, but powerful. Because somewhere along the way, Olivia stopped asking, "What's next?" and started asking, "What's meaningful?" Her music became less about success and more about connection. Her presence on stage felt less like performance and more like gratitude. And for those watching, especially those who had faced their own battles with health, loss, or change, it resonated on a deeper level. She wasn't just someone they admired anymore. She was someone they understood. And maybe that's what made this chapter of her life so important. Not the fame, not the comeback, but the quiet decision to live differently after everything had changed. Because sometimes, the strongest people aren't the ones who keep pushing forward, but the ones who learn when to slow down and why. And if you've ever had to rethink what truly matters in your own life, stay with me. But even after everything she had already endured, life wasn't finished testing her. In 2005, Olivia faced a kind of pain that doesn't come with answers. Her partner at the time disappeared during a fishing trip off the California coast, roughly 1,000 yards offshore, and was never found. No closure. No final goodbye. Just silence. For anyone who has ever lost someone without explanation, you know how different that kind of grief feels. It lingers. It circles back. It leaves questions that never settle. And for Olivia, it wasn't just personal. It unfolded in public. Speculation filled headlines. Rumors spread. Stories were told by people who didn't know her about a situation no one could truly understand. Through it all, she remained quiet. No dramatic statements. No attempts to control the narrative. Just a woman carrying something heavy, privately, while the world watched from a distance. But the losses didn't stop there. Years later, her sister was diagnosed with brain cancer and passed away just weeks after the diagnosis. It was sudden, devastating, and deeply personal. Before that grief could even settle, Olivia faced another reality: her own cancer had returned. This time, it had spread. And yet, once again, she chose not to center her life around fear. There were no grand announcements at first. No retreat from the world. Instead, she continued, quietly performing, appearing, staying connected to her audience. To those watching, she seemed steady. But beneath that steadiness was something far more difficult: years of silent endurance. This was pain without closure. Loss without resolution. A kind of weight that doesn't fade with time, but becomes part of who you are. And still, she transformed it. Rather than turning inward, Olivia began to focus outward. She devoted more of her energy to helping others, particularly those facing the same illness she had battled for decades. She founded and supported a cancer wellness center, creating a space not just for treatment, but for healing in a broader sense. It wasn't about medicine alone. It was about dignity, comfort, and hope. One of the most powerful moments came when she participated in a fundraising walk along the Great Wall of China, covering miles of steep stone paths, step by step, alongside others who believed in the same cause. For Olivia, this wasn't symbolic. It was physical, demanding, and real. A reminder that even after everything, she was still moving forward. That's where the transformation becomes clear. She was no longer just a survivor. She became a healer. Not in the traditional sense, but in the way she lived. Through her actions, her presence, her willingness to keep giving even when life had taken so much. And for many, especially those who had followed her for decades, that may be the most meaningful part of her legacy. Because in the end, it wasn't about what happened to her. It was about what she chose to do with it. And if you've ever wondered how someone keeps going, even after everything, stay with me. Olivia Newton-John's story isn't just about fame or even survival. It's about something far quieter and far rarer. In a world that often celebrates loud success, she chose grace. In a life that gave her every reason to harden, she chose kindness. And maybe that's her true legacy. Not the records, not the roles, but the reminder that even after everything is taken, you can still choose who you become. Because if you look back at her life, not just the highlights, but the spaces in between, you begin to see a pattern. Not of constant victory, but of quiet decisions. The kind that don't make headlines. The kind people make in hospital rooms, in moments of loss, in long stretches of uncertainty when no one is watching. She didn't reinvent herself to stay famous. She did it because life required it. She didn't step away from the spotlight because she failed. She stepped away because she understood that not everything valuable can be measured in applause or chart positions. And when she returned, it wasn't to prove something, it was simply to continue, on her own terms. For many Americans who grew up with her, through the 70s, the 80s, and beyond, her journey mirrors something deeply familiar. Life doesn't move in a straight line. It changes. It interrupts. It asks more of you than you expected. And sometimes, it takes things you thought would always be there. What Olivia showed, without ever needing to say it directly, is that strength doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes, it looks like showing up again. Like choosing to care when it would be easier not to. Like holding on to warmth in a world that can slowly wear people down. From a broader perspective, her life also reflects a shift in how we understand success over time. Early in her career, success looked like recognition, visibility, momentum. Later, it became something more internal: purpose, contribution, balance. That evolution isn't unique to her. It's something many people experience as they move through different stages of life. What stands out is how naturally she seemed to accept that shift. She didn't resist it. She didn't try to hold on to an earlier version of herself. Instead, she allowed her life to expand into something deeper, even when that path came with pain. And perhaps that's why her story continues to resonate, especially with those who have lived long enough to understand that life is not defined by a single chapter. It's defined by how you carry what comes next. Olivia Newton-John carried it with grace, with patience, with a kind of quiet courage that doesn't demand attention, but earns respect over time. And in the end, that may be what people remember most. Not just how she performed, but how she lived. If her story stayed with you, take a moment to reflect, and if you'd like more stories like this, stay with the channel.